My name is Eugene Ofori Agyei from Ghana, West Africa. My work explores the diasporic concept of displacement through themes like cultural identity, the concept of home, and ritual. I work with a lot of material ranging from clay, textiles, wood, and fun objects. I basically use my story as a metaphor to express language like what it means to travel, what it means to belong and exist in between.
So I have you can tell that I have most of my work covered in plastic because sometimes when I'm working in the studio, and I have them opening, I don't know where to go because they all be talking to me and be like, "Oh, come to me," It's been a long time touching me. For my clay work, I become everything. I am the manpower. I am the extruder. I am the pad mill. My body become the two. I think my relationship with clay started off as a child. There's Akan women in the community working, making parts. They're kind of like fascinating seeing these women making something out of nothing. The way I used to process clay in Ghana is different from how I work with clay here. In Ghana, I get to dig the clay from the pit. You get to see and understand the history of the material, how the material got to this site. I get to see the different type of stones. I get to see different types of debris. I get to see different type of wood in it. I get to see the cloth. So that should tell you how much this material, has traveled from one place to another. Kind of like, going to the spa, massaging my feet, my body, my mind, my soul, processing things in my mind, and I think that's something that I really like literally. I use clay because clay is the material that capture my touch. Clay keep the records of my emotions. When you go on social media, the war, the climate change, immigration policy, deporting people are being deported. And when I see those things, I get emotions. Even though I'm not being affected, but for me, I also speak the same language. I came to my studio and I was like, okay, I want to make this work. I don't know, but I just want to play with clay just to heal, to work on my emotion through the process of just sorting myself with the material. The process of making makes me think about my movement from one cultural setting to another and not knowing what to expect. Growing up as a child, after my parent divorced at the age of 3, I have to move from my cultural ethnic group to another ethnic group that speak different language, eat different food, think about colors in different way. And when I got there, I realized that I'm being identified as an Akan. But before that, when I was in my ethnic group, I didn't know anything about that. But I became more aware of my ethnic group after I moved to that cultural setting. We traveled to another West African country, and there I realized that I'm being identified as a Ghanaian. I traveled to the US, and when I get to the airport, my first identification was, oh, he's from Africa. So I realized that, my identity keep changing and my experience keep changing within space and time. And that's how I also think about my process, because I don't really have any expectations where to use this specific material in my work. So I make the clay, but through the process of making, I don't know where the yarns will go. I don't know where the wood comes in. I don't know where the fabric comes in. So not knowing what to expect and also knowing or having this expectation, they all come with a shock. So the in between, the void is what I feel and what I'm interested in my work. I don't really have, interesting, like wild tools. My first time in the US was, in grad school. My colleague, who was a year ahead of me, came to my studio and said, "Oh, your studio is empty. Do you have your tools? Do you need help to, lay your tools out and all that?" And I was like, "I have my backpack. I just came with my backpack." And he laughed. So she took me to her studio, and I realized that she has everything, like everything, the tools and all that. I showed her my hand. I said, "This is my tool." These are some of the basic tools that I was using. But, in my work, you might think that this is the tools or the only thing that I use. But I also have special tools that I use, which a lot of people don't think about. Vulnerability, surviving, tools like anxiety, uncertainty, tools like resilience. Those special tools are the emotions. I get my fabric from Ghana, specifically from the MoCA market where I was born. I collaborate with my mom through FaceTime. She'll go to the market, negotiate with the women. So where is the fabric from? That is something that I think about. Even with the fabric, I always think about it being a myth because we don't really know where the fabric is coming from. Being originated from Indonesia, travel to, even to Holland, and then moved to Ghana. And this fabric, was able to gain market in Ghana. We are calling this fabric as an African fabric until when I started working on it and I started like paying attention to this material. So, I use the history of the fabric to talk about the complexity of living in the diaspora. I talk about, migration. I talk about what makes something authentic. For me personally, that's what I'm interested in, the myth of the fabric. After getting the fabric from the market, she will ship them to me through the post office. It goes through immigration process, it gets the stamp, it travel across the border and get to my studio. This process, collaborating with my mom, I got to talk to her. I get to speak my own language because I'm always speaking English and I'm so scared to forget where I'm coming from or what the language that I speak. So when I'm talking to my mom, so she would tell me I don't sound like a Ghanaian or an Akan. But when I'm talking to my colleagues here, they know that I'm from Ghana. So that idea of talking to her, I think, is a way of me connecting to my root, is a way of me getting opportunity to speak my own language. When a fabric get to my studio from Ghana, what I do is that I sort them out and start reading the text on it. So I was looking at this, and this reads in a Akan language, which says "Ejapawo emanyina edawase." In English, it says it's a tribute to the grandparents or a tribute to someone saying thank you for the good work. Thank you for taking care of us. This fabric is normally used for funeral in Ghana. Working on this project inspired by Akan Edinkra symbol. I'm really enjoying it because the symbol itself, we usually see these symbols in ink. You write them in ink. And now, I'm rewriting or recontextualizing the symbols using, this material, which is clay fiber, African textiles, wood, and found objects. It became more like an endowment, which is something that I really enjoy in terms of my process of making. Because, after putting everything together, now I will start thinking about what if I include this yarn, and even with the type of yarn, I think about the color. What am I doing with the material? How am I clothing the clay itself? which is simple. I just intentionally smash it and started like picking up the broken pieces and putting them together to, rewrite, the history of identity and also like question, the idea of fixed identity. So this is my hair that I started pulling it off, thinking about my upbringing as a child where my mom always told me to take down my hair. And then when I moved to the US and she saw my hair, and the first thing she said to me like, "Oh, American is changing you. Your hair and everything." So I started like pulling my hair in the room, pulling, and I questioned myself, "Oh, what will happen if I include into my work?" Interesting. I think I was fascinated with the pain, thinking about the notion of vulnerability in my work. When people ask me why I chose this career, I think, art is not, doing art is not a profession. I think it's a destiny. Doing art is not a skill, it's here. So when I'm talking about art, you could tell that I become more emotional, I change even in the presence of my friends. And that makes me think about art being life. I know that putting my work out there, and knowing that people understand what I'm trying to communicate, I think for me is a blessing because I know that my work is going out there to change the world. Even if it can't change the world right now, but I know definitely years back, people will go back again and talk about my work, and that's how powerful art can be. Art makes me happy. It brings me joy. Seeing kids going to museums, galleries, and coming together, community coming together as a whole because of art makes me think about how powerful art can be. So for me, art is everything. I don't think I can endure life without art.